Yeah, bro. So I mean, welcome to the conversation. And nobody knew you, right?
Hmm.
Obviously, I can introduce you, Jeff. Noel, speaker, author, all the things. How would you introduce yourself to the audience, to the crowd, of people who are maybe just hearing this or seeing this for the first time?
Hmm. The way I would introduce myself to people would be the words I would want on my tombstone. And those words are, he was helplessly and relentlessly ambitious toward fulfilling his purpose and helping others do the same.
I feel like you're gonna keep going.
Nah, the tombstone's not that big. Unless y'all want to dish out money to get a
Hold on.
larger tombstone.
Talking about. Is he yelling too loud? Yeah, it's good though.
Okay, don't be look. You want to start all over?
No, this is great. I'm just gonna cut this
Okay.
out.
I botched the quote a little, but it's fine.
It's a great quote though. Anyway,
Yeah.
all right. So anything else you want to add to it?
Nah, that's what I want them to know about me. I'm a purpose-oriented person, and my goal is also to help people achieve their purpose in life, because I believe that God put every single human on earth for a reason. And part of the reason why a lot of people do not feel fulfilled in life is because they're not purpose-oriented. It's because a lot of things they do is not meaningful in the sense of it doesn't have any long-term or eternal value. A lot of people are simply living for the moment. A lot of people are living only for today or even only for tomorrow, but a lot of people are not living for 10 years from now or 20 years from now, or what their legacy will mean in the light of eternity. And if people orient themselves toward purpose, then their lives never be the same.
How do you get somebody to speaking of purpose? How do you get somebody to orient themselves to legacy and to purpose when you know, a lot of the people that look like me, like you, or that's trying to get a head start, they're looking for the right now, right? I got to cash out now. I got to get to the bag now. I got to get to the thing now, the accolade now. How do you, because usually when we're talking about legacy and purpose, that takes a lot longer to happen. So there's no such thing as instant gratification when you're talking about legacy and purpose, right? And things that are long term. But in a society, in an environment where,
Mhm.
we're, we're trying to get the thing right now, how do you get somebody to focus on that?
Yeah. Now is 3 letters, and tomorrow is a whole lot more letters. I don't know how many, but it's a whole lot more letters. And the reason I say that is because now is so temporary, but tomorrow is a long time. Now, tomorrow is not promised. However, if you live as though, so here's what you have to do. You have to live as though you may not be here tomorrow, but plan as though you'll be here for the next 100 years. And if you have that mentality, then the decisions that you make today will ensure that you live a long and healthy life tomorrow. Because if someone is only thinking about now, then they're not intentional about their health. They're not intentional about their spiritual life. They're not intentional about how they communicate with their family or their friends. They're just thinking of themselves and how they feel in the moment, but that doesn't lead to long-term benefit. It leads to long-term pain, as a matter of fact. And if you plan on being on earth for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, then you want to have healthy relationships. You want to have a long-term good health. You want to be able to position yourself well, so when life comes around 70 years old, you have people around your bed who loves you, right? I think of, and I don't tell this story often. I don't think I ever told this story, but a few years ago when my dad was sick and he was in the hospital and he was fighting for his life, I remember I was in the hospital room. I think he took a nap, so I was walking around, and there was this older gentleman who was walking in the hospital walls, and he was clearly frail, sick, and weak as well. Older guy, and he was holding on to the wall. There was like an indentation on the wall. He was holding on to as he was walking, and I remember having a conversation with him, and we were speaking, and he said he's about to get discharged soon. And I was like, oh man, that's great. You're about to get discharged. You're about to go home. And I was excited for him, but then he looked sad. He said, I actually don't want to go home. I don't want to go back home. And I said, why don't you want to go home? And he said, my home is a mess. It's dirty. There's no one there waiting for me. There's no one that's gonna show up to my house. There's no one that's gonna care for me. At least here at the hospital, someone checks on me. At least here at the hospital, someone is bringing me food. At least here at the hospital, it's clean. And if I go back to my house, I have nobody and I'll have no one to help. And that really stuck with me because I don't know his situation at all, obviously. And he was older, probably 60, 70 years old. And I just remember thinking, I never want to be in a position in life where I rather be in a hospital being taken care of by strangers than being at a house with people who love me.
Mm,
And a lot of people who think short term, they're going to be that person who rather be in a hospital room than at home.
wow, that's interesting you say that, and even to expound beyond that,
Mhm.
um, although we're the most connected generation of all time,
Hmm.
like, not even generation, we're the most connected of any society that we've
Yeah.
ever, right? We're also the most loneliest.
Mm.
One of the reasons why things like that can happen is simply because we spend so much time on the things that we think matter,
Yeah.
things that are superficial, things that don't really hold any gravity in terms of the legacy that we're trying to live, and we don't invest in people enough. We
Yeah.
invest in the things that are on our devices.
Mm.
But if we invest more in people when we do die or when we do have a funeral, when we do get sick, there'll be more people to rally around us. And I think our values have changed a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, More me, and from all the generations, from the generations that are older than us to the generations that are younger than us to our generation.
Yeah.
And I think when we change that and we get back to the true value system of how we should live the life, who we should live this life with, not getting caught up in uh the materialism of the world, the capitalism of America that we live in. I think then we will get back to our values. Because at the end of the day, we know we don't leave with anything, right?
Mhm.
And usually we're forgotten within a generation or two. And even
That's
people that
sad.
are, and even the most famous people in the world, whoever you think the most famous people are.
Yeah.
And then so, like, what are we truly leaving? We should focus on leaving the principles and the memories.
I
And
love
so
that. Yep.
I agree with that.
Yeah, whenever I give a speech, sometimes I would ask questions at a speech and I'll ask the audience who here knows the name of your grandparents. And a fair amount of people raise their hands. I said, who here knows the name of their great grandparents? And most of the time, no hands go up because most people don't even know the names of their great grandparents. A lot don't even know the names of their grandparents.
Right.
And to me, that just shows how quickly someone's legacy can fade if they're not intentional about being purpose oriented. That's how quickly your name can disappear in the ash heap of history if you're not serious about pouring into others. Because when you pour into others, your impact and your legacy amplifies. But when you only pour into yourself, then everything stays self contained and everything dies with you.
No, that's good. You mentioned speaking, when you're at your speaking
Yeah.
engagement. So what got you into speaking? Because I know you speak around the world. You've been to Poland. You've been
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
Africa.
I'm about to go to
You're
Africa in
going to
March.
Africa.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
been all over the world.
Yeah.
Speaking of course all over the U.S.
Hmm.
What got you into that space?
Man, it's a long story, but I'll give you the short version. I was in a place in my life where I was very, very lost. I dropped out of school to start a business, and that business failed after a few months. Actually, had to close the doors of that business on my birthday. So that was like an anti-present to myself. And I remember thinking, man, what am I going to do? I ended up working valet. There was a lot of things happening, and I felt unmotivated. And that was one of the first times I started listening to motivational speakers, and I started to evaluate my relationship with God as well. And I watched a video called What Does It Mean to Be Human? And part of the answer for what does it mean to be human was that we have intrinsic worth and intrinsic value. And that means the value that we have as humans is not based on who we know, where we live, what car we drive, who our circle of friends are. Like, that's not how we measure our value as humans. We measure our value by the fact that we're made in the image of God, and that means we have eternal worthiness, right? And that message completely transformed how I viewed myself. And I was raised in a great household. Like, I always say, My childhood was great and it was long. It was great and it was long. You can't ask for anything better than that, right? However, obviously I'm human and I still had my insecurities. I still had and have a lot of the things that weigh us down, the darkness that's inside of us that we are afraid of or ashamed of, that we want to keep hidden because this is my insecurity. And if anyone knows about it, then I feel like I'm not worthy. But when I received the message of intrinsic worth and intrinsic value, that told me that I'm already worthy, that nothing can detract from my value. And when that message transformed my life, I thought about all the other people who weren't raised in good households, who weren't raised around a solid circle of friends and family. I thought about those people and I told myself, if the message of intrinsic worth could help me, then how much more can it help people in the world? And when I internalized that message and I realized how much it could help the world, I thought about public speaking. I asked myself, what is the best way I can get this message to the most amount of people at the same time? And yes, I could do one on one conversations. However, the best speakers, they're able to have a conversation with thousands of people at the same time and make it seem or make it feel as though you're speaking to individuals. And ultimately, that's what you're doing when you're speaking in public. You're speaking to individuals in a group. And public speaking is the avenue that I have used to share that message with the world.
How did you overcome the fear of public speaking? They say besides death, public speaking is the number one fear of most people. How did you
Yeah.
even get over that?
Many times people are more afraid of public speaking than they are of death.
For sure.
At a funeral, a lot of people rather be in the casket than the person giving the eulogy because they
Wow.
are that they're that afraid of death. And that's actually a reference, a joke from Jerry Seinfeld. And the fear of public speaking, I don't have it anymore. However, at times, depending on the speech, depending on the topic, I do sense that anxious feel of, I really hope I kill this. Now, most times, 99.90, 90, 90, 90, 90, 99% of the time, I kill it. I kill the speech. I'm like that. You feel me? That's just, it's not being pretentious or pompous, but when you know you're good, you know you're good. When you know you're great, you're great, right? And the fear of speaking, I was able to overcome it through deliberate practice and being intentional about learning skills in order to be effective. Because a lot of people, they think the fear is only mental. And for a lot of people, the fear might only be mental. However, part of the reason for the fear or any type of fear is a lack of knowledge on skills in order to be proficient or in order to be excellent at public speaking, because you can not be afraid to speak in front of people, but that doesn't mean you're going to be good. That doesn't mean you're going to convince people to pay attention. That doesn't mean you're going to be engaging. That doesn't mean people are going to listen. So fear is just one part of the equation, but knowing how to be excellent at public speaking, that's another part of the equation. And there's those a combination of practice and knowledge, not only learning but practicing what I learned, and that's what helped me to overcome the fear.
What is and that's so good that you say that. What did you learn most, or what have you learned the most from traveling internationally and speaking in front of not only just people but different types of people?
Man, that's a great question. The lesson that I learned when speaking in Poland is something that everyone should learn for their lives in general. And it's this: yes, I have a message. Yes, I have a personality. Yes, I have my own culture. Yes, I have my own ideas. Yes, I have a certain style of speaking. I have all those things that's unique to me. However, one of the most effective ways to connect with someone is to learn about who they are. It's to learn about their ideas, their beliefs, their culture, their perspective. And once you learn those things about them and you integrate your message through those lens, you filter it through that perspective, then you're able to connect easily with them. And now once you make that connection with them, then they're more willing and able to connect with your culture, idea, and beliefs. And that's exactly what I did in Poland. Before I got to the country, I spent a good amount of time learning about what they believe. I learned a lot about how they normally receive public speakers, how they communicate with one another. In my speech, I planned on giving an example about a wedding. And I said, wait a minute, there's a culture around wedding here in the States, but what's the culture over there in Poland? Because I can't just give the example that will work perfectly here in Miami, but then I go to Poznan University of Technology and give that same example and expect for it to be effective. So I had to learn, what do they believe about marriage over there? How do men typically propose over there? Is it the man that proposed over there? Right. And I had to learn those things and inform myself on their culture in order to effectively connect with them.
No, that's good. So,
Yeah.
and I wasn't gonna go into this so early, but I just picked up the new book that you just launched.
Yeah.
Right. My man is an author, multi times over,
Yeah.
multi author, workshop book
Mhm.
provider, speaks in front of, students all the time in classrooms, workshops. We actually went to Chicago and
Yeah.
spoke. So this is his book, and it's called Faith and Works: Living Your Purpose with Action. So congrats in advance, just released.
Yeah.
Uh, so now that you talk about public speaking, I literally just opened the book, and
Yeah.
on page 133, it talks about what you just said, speaking the language of your audience, not only from your
I
expertise.
didn't even plan that. I didn't even plan that. That's crazy. That's exactly what's in here.
Yeah,
Yo,
right.
that's live.
That's good. It's called alignment. It's called God. So,
Yeah.
and so when you say speaking the language of your audience, not only from your expertise, why is that important? Not only in public speaking, but I feel like that's something that people can do when they're talking to people in general, right?
Mhm.
You don't have to be on a stage or talking at people. You can just be having conversation. Why is that important? How can somebody even do that, especially when they don't have experience talking with a whole bunch of people?
Yeah, that's important because when so let me give you an example that's in the book right here. If I'm a business owner, right, and I'm talking to a group of students who are freshmen, they didn't enter into any business courses yet, but they may have an interest in business. I have to be mindful about the language that I use, because if I'm speaking to other business owners that's been around for 15, 20 years, they know a lot of the terminology. They know a lot of the acronyms. They have read the books or listened to the podcast or studied a lot of business owners, and they already have a lot of experience. And there's a certain language that you speak with when you speak to other people who are proficient at the skill or proficient at the work or proficient in that institution. However, when you're speaking to younger people who may not have that experience, you have to take that language and you have to filter it through what they possibly understand or what they possibly experience, because you're not impressive because you know a bunch of big words or acronyms and you say it out loud. And just because you know and they don't, that doesn't make you impressive. That makes you ineffective at communicating, right? And that's the purpose in meeting people where they are. So the example is, if a business owner says to a group of students, I encourage you to create an LLC in order to make yourself more fundable for grants by the SBA to help you create an MVP. No one understands what that means. No one understands what that means. However, if you say instead, I encourage you to make sure your business is legal because the government can help give you money to create and test the product, then that makes a lot more sense.
Correct.
No one knows that an MVP means minimum viable product.
Right.
No one knows that the SBA stands for the Small Business Administration, right? And you have to be able to speak in the language that people understand. And that's one of the most effective ways. It's not about sounding smart. I know a whole bunch of big words. That doesn't mean I should use them all the time. That's ineffective communication.
So it's one of the reasons why you wrote this book. Why did you even write this book, Faith and Works?
Yeah.
What was the point of even writing this book?
Yeah. The reason why I wrote it, it wasn't necessarily to break down the terminology. The reason I wrote the book was to help believers. Because here's the thing,
You're a believer in what? You're a believer in what?
believer in Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing. A lot of Christians, they think just because they're saved, that means God will do all the work. All they have to do is have faith, and God does the work. But in reality, that's wrong. In James, the Bible says faith without works is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the book is called Faith and Works. I should have put and. Like, that should be the biggest thing on the book. I should have put faith and works.
All right, don't yell
Because,
too loud now, dog. Come on
because
now.
yes, faith is important, but you also have to be excellent in your works. Because
Right.
you can't say, I'm a Christian, I love Jesus, and my goal is to bring everyone to Christ, but you are the least effective person at your job. You always come early, you leave late, you are not skilled, you don't do any personal or professional development, you hold on to grudge and anger, you're not mentally disciplined. When it's time to present your work in public, you're stuttering and stammering and you can't deliver an effective message. When it's time to lead a group, you are a terrible leader. You're constantly micromanaging. You don't understand how to properly serve the people that's under you. All of that is works. All that is works. It doesn't take faith to be a great leader. It takes understanding how to lead to be a great leader. So yes, you have faith in God, and then you also have to learn what are the leadership skills you need in order to do the work well. Because you will say, okay, I want to get a promotion at work, and God can give you favor to get that promotion. But when you actually get promoted, if you're not good at what you do, then you're going to get fired or demoted because you don't know how to do the job well. And faith without works is meant to help believers understand how to be excellent in their works.
You know, what's funny is that as I'm reading through the book, which is great, I believe actually, this is something that I'm even working on being a better leader. Now I'm walking in the actionable part. How do people look at me when I don't say anything?
Mm,
I watched a video the other day, and it's about relationships, and it was talking about, you know, um, if the person that you're dating or that you're talking to, or your husband or your wife or even a friend, right? If they couldn't speak,
mm,
would you still be attracted to them?
mm,
And it has everything to do with how they live their life when they're not speaking.
mm.
And I think
That's
even,
fire.
yeah, even and even in that point
Yeah.
of view, I look at it like, man, that was so profound to me because, man, how am I actually living my daily life? How
Mm,
consistent am I in what I'm doing?
mm-hmm,
How am I approaching my day? Right?
mm-hmm.
How am I communicating in such nonverbal ways?
Yeah.
How am I
Yeah.
being a leader without necessarily leading with my words?
Mm-hmm.
And turning into this page
Mm-hmm.
183,
Yeah.
right? The lesson talks about, leadership is revealed more in pressure than in planning.
Leadership is revealed more in pressure than in planning.
But wait,
Okay, I get excited
but wait,
when I talk about these things.
but wait.
Yeah.
And then in page 184,
Yeah.
it talks about what leaders do under pressure, and it talks about what bad leaders do and
Mm.
what good leaders do. What was your thought process behind writing these particular 2 pages and writing this chart? Like, what makes a leader a bad leader, and what makes a leader a good leader?
Oh, that's a great question. I have been under bad leaders and I have been under good leaders. And good leaders, they have the ability to help not only walk people toward their own vision, but help lead people toward their own vision as well. Because it's one thing to say, all right, everybody, let's go. This is where God is taking me. But it's another thing to say, let's all walk in the direction. And as we go towards where God is taking me, I'm also going to help you go to where God wants you to go as well. And that makes a significant difference in the lives of the people who follow you. And what I wrote about is bad leaders, they ignore those they serve, right? Because you are supposed to serve those who follow you, right? So they ignore those they serve, and good leaders listen to those they serve. Bad leaders, they're constantly looking for someone to blame if something goes wrong. A good leader says, the buck stops with me. I take responsibility. A bad leader, they're constantly trying to protect their image, while a great leader protects people.
Mm.
Right? A bad leader, they shut down communication, and a good leader, they increase transparency. All right. And there's a longer list in the book. And if I guarantee you, just those 3 or 4 traits I just mentioned alone, if leaders fix that, then it will completely transform their flock. It will completely transform the people that follow them.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question is this: when
Hmm.
you're talking about faith and works and leadership.
Mhm.
I see a lot of times, especially in the faith-based community, I'm a Christian as well. I believe in Jesus, and
Yeah.
a lot of times in the church or with people that believe in, you know, eh, Christianity or are Christians, we have this, forgiveness mindset, right? Which is great, right?
Yeah.
We're forgiving people. We are I wouldn't say look at the other way people, but we are a empathetic people. Like
Mhm.
we're more understanding.
Mhm.
So how do you, when it comes to leadership and when it comes to believing in these principles of, allowing people to grow within their own trajectory when it comes to, being Christ-like in a way, how does leadership and that coexist when a lot of times leadership can be cutthroat?
Yeah.
Leadership can be very strenuous. Leadership can be comprised of making tough decisions that, people can look at as, unforgiving, So how do you balance the two and how do you even merge the two when it comes to leadership and faith?
Man, so that's actually a great question because it's not about balancing faith and leadership, but it's about intertwining the two. Because true faith is not only belief, true faith is a mixture of belief and action. And action is one of the most important traits of leadership. And you can't say, I believe this chair is sturdy, but when I say, may you sit on the chair, you say no. Why won't you sit on it? It's because you don't believe it's sturdy. You can't say, I believe that it's safe to walk outside of that door. And I say, all right, you go first. But then you're scared to open the door. It's because you don't truly believe. It's because you truly don't have faith if you don't take the action. And that's why faith and action are intertwined. And that's how you can't be a leader without having faith. And you can't have faith without being a leader, right? It's because you have to exercise that skill of action, the importance of courage. You have to exercise that if you want to truly be a good leader. And that's a great indication that you actually have faith.
Oh, that's good. It's great. I love the stuff that's in this book already.
Hmm.
I have a question. What does it take to make a book like this? Right? If somebody wanted to become an author, they look at you, they say, "Hey, we see that you are a professor.
Hmm.
We see that you're a world-renowned speaker. We see that you're an author many times over,
Yeah.
and they want to do something like this. What does it take to make a book? How can somebody make a book like this? And
Yeah.
how can they even, sell a book like this?"
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. Most people who have a desire to write a book won't write a book because desire alone does not indicate you will take action. We have a desire for a lot of things we never act upon. Unfortunately, there's a lot of things we desire that's bad for us that we actually do act upon. And the question is, why are we more inclined to take action on desires that's bad instead of desires that's actually good for us? We have a desire to scroll through social media and laugh and look at memes and watch reels for hours straight. We have a desire to do that. And guess what? We do it. But we also have a desire, many people, to write a book, but they don't spend hours writing, right? The issue is mental discipline. The issue is mental discipline. And that's actually one of the first lessons I teach in this book. I have four major pillars in the book: mental discipline, building healthy relationships, public speaking, and leadership. And the first thing I tackle is mental discipline. And the way that I wrote this book specifically, because as you mentioned, I've written 5 books and I've written, I think, 6 or 7 workbooks. So I have over 10 published works. And this specific book, no lie, from start to finish, it took me about 4 or 5 days. At the end of 2025, I live in Miami. I flew to Atlanta. I locked myself in a hotel room for 4 days. I started working on it in Miami, so that's where the first day came in. But I locked myself in a hotel room for 4 days, and I started writing for over 10 hours a day. Just writing, typing, writing, typing, writing, typing. That's why I'm saying writing, typing is the same thing. It's I'm acting like I was literally writing the book. I was writing and typing, right? I did that for 4 days straight, 28,000 words, completely locked in and focused. I could have spent my winter break watching This Christmas again. I could have spent my winter break doing a lot of things, but God had put this on my heart to write this specific book. And there's a specific method that I use to write it, and I actually have that method in here in this book. It's called the Pomodoro method, because the solution or the trick is not to be focused for 10 hours straight. That's not the trick, because your brain will get tired after a while. Our brain is not built to work for 10 hours straight. The Pomodoro method helps us in that you would work at 25-minute intervals. So you work for 25 minutes, then you rest for 5 minutes. You work for 25 minutes, then you rest for 5 minutes. So essentially, you give yourself a mini Sabbath every 25 minutes. Okay. And then after 2 hours, you take a longer break, maybe a 30-minute break or a 45-minute break. And I literally did that for over 10 hours for 4 days straight. And that's how I was able to come up with this specific book. Now, all my books, I've written it in different ways, but that's just how I did this one. For whatever reason, I had to type every single word for this one. But other books, I spoke the book. I would have someone ask me questions and I just answered it out loud, and then I transcribed it. And then that's how I was able to come up with some other workbooks that I made. So there's different methods, but ultimately it boils down to focusing on a very specific task and not getting distracted.
Hmm. That's great. So now beyond that, so now the book is
Mm.
written.
Yeah.
How does somebody publish the book? How does somebody how do you put the book out?
Yeah.
And even beyond that, how much can somebody make from publishing a book
That's a
and
good
becoming an
question.
author?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question.
So the publishing and then the money making part.
Yeah, publishing is very easy. We don't need permission from big publishers to get our book out there, right? We have Amazon, and it's actually quite simple. What I do after I was done with the transcript, I sent it to someone on Fiverr to format the book, because you can't just take a Word document and send it to Amazon and they'll publish it. You have to format the book for a specific frame that fits the size of the book. And then once you get that file, it's typically a PDF file, then you submit that to Amazon. And then you also find someone to create a cover. And again, you can go to Fiverr to do that, and they'll create the cover for you. If you like the cover, you say yes, and then they'll send you a PDF file, and then you submit that to Amazon. And then it takes them 1 to 3 days to approve your book. And after 1 to 3 days, it's on Amazon. It's that simple to get your book published and out there.
And then so once it's published, how do you promote it? Do the Amazon promote it for you? Do you have to promote it yourself? Self promotion? How does that work?
Mhm. Amazon does not promote it for you.
Okay.
At least they haven't promoted mine.
So
Amazon, if you promote books, then you definitely have not promoted mine yet. So I need you to start doing that.
so Amazon is the
Yeah.
distribution center.
Correct. So
Right.
Amazon is just it's distributing your book, because almost, and forgive me if I'm making this number up, but at least 80% of books purchased online is done through Amazon. That's why it's the primary place to go. And also, getting an ISBN number for your book, that can be expensive to most. So what is an ISBN number? I don't know what it literally stands for, but it's essentially the social security number for your book. And ISBNs are expensive. One ISBN can be like $150, or you could buy a bundle for 200 something dollars. But Amazon gives you free ISBN numbers if you publish it exclusively on Amazon's platform. And I have saved a lot of money just getting my ISBN from Amazon. But how to get it in the hands of many people, you have to do what I'm doing now. You have to go on podcasts. You have to find audiences to speak in front of. You have to, in this case, I have to find churches who's looking to advance their congregation. Because here's the thing, a lot of pastors, respectfully and rightfully so, they ask their congregation to contribute to the house. Obviously, if you're benefiting from the house, you're benefiting from the church, it makes sense to give back to the church. Now, a lot of believers, their prayer request is for a new job. Their prayer request is to pay their bills, is for money, right? And it should be the pastor's goal to position their congregation to be more financially secure, to be more financially stable. And part of a way to be financially stable is to become excellent in your works. Is to be excellent in your works, right? And that's something that I want to share with pastors. I want to teach their congregation how they can become excellent in their work, so they can have a better chance at getting a promotion, so they can have a better chance at being a leader in their business, in their household, so they could be a leader wherever they go. And it's taking a message like that and it's sending it to people who can actually purchase your book. And that's a way to get it in the hands of many people.
Why do you feel like Pastors, we know that there's a deficit between the economic status of the congregation versus the economic status of a pastor,
Hmm.
right? Usually. And maybe that's kind of how it was designed. So how can pastors or pastoral leaders or church leaders do a better job of allowing their congregation to be in a better,
Hmm.
economic position? What are some of the tactics that you think can happen besides becoming an author, of course?
Yeah. Well, respectfully, most pastors are not in a better economic position than their congregants. Most pastors are struggling.
Mm,
Most pastors are working a second job in order to pay for their own bills and to pay for the church.
okay.
So respectfully, that's just not the case. Most pastors do struggle. Now, what pastors should do, and I don't like using the word should, but I
Right, what they
really,
can do.
but I'm going to use the word should. What pastors should do is they should be intentional about seeing how can they help their congregation become more economically strong. For example, I give a lot of speeches, as you know. I enter into a lot of rooms with wealthy people and powerful individuals. And inside those rooms, I always see pastors. Why is it that the people in those rooms are not going to their congregation to teach them how to also become influential, how to also become powerful, how to also be financially stable? Pastors are constantly going to dinners with business owners, and they go on stage and they do the opening prayer. They go on and they bless the food, and then they sit down and they eat with everybody else. But why are you not talking with the person sitting next to you who has a business where they hire hundreds of people? Why are they not coming to your church and offering people a job? Why are they not coming to your church and teaching people what are the skills they need to learn in order to work for their company? Right. And I believe pastors should be more intentional about leveraging their influence and their power in order to help their congregation. If you realize that most people in your church are lacking the skills in order to get higher wages, then you need to do professional development. Tell the church, hey, this Saturday, we're going to come to the church. I have someone that's going to teach you public speaking. So the
Mm,
next time you have to deliver a presentation at work, you are the best at it. Hey, everybody, I'm going to have a career fair at the church. I know 10 business owners who's hiring. Let's do a career fair because I know a lot of you are praying for a job. It's not going to drop out of nowhere. It's going to drop here in the church. Right. And if pastors do things like have a career fair, do professional
bring
development.
somebody in and teach them AI, teach them all these
Yes, yes, it'll
things.
completely change the lives of the members of their congregation.
Right,
And now they're not begging people to give money they don't have because the people literally got the job because of the church.
right. That's so good. And then in return, the church will be more abundant because the people in the
Yes,
congregation are learning these skill sets.
100%.
And now that I think about that, the church is such a powerful place because the especially in our communities, right? The
Yeah.
church is like a pillar. It's a place
Yes.
where we go for everything. I mean, growing up, I was at church 3-4 times a week,
Yeah.
whether it was choir, whether it was a play that my mother was in that I had to go to.
Mm-hmm.
I was at both services for 3 hours apiece.
Lot, boy.
Whether it was, Bible study on a Wednesday night,
Yeah.
whether it was the youth service, whether it was, the Halloween service, the Christmas service, the New Year's service, I was at church.
Yeah.
So what we do is we put a lot of emphasis on the church. And I think a lot of times what people are scared of is the church shouldn't run away from. And I remember sitting down, eating with somebody who is a leader in a church. And at the time the church was talking about like money and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, "Man, I love the church, but I don't like when they're talking about money."
Mm.
And then this was like a whole conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, if the church could lean in and not only talk about money, but talk about stewardship, talk about provision, talk about,
Mm-hmm.
actually giving skill sets, teaching how to jobs, the new age of where the world is going. Because we have these built-in principles that we're trying to uphold, man, we could actually make the world better. Because
100%.
now these tools and these skill sets and these departments and this knowledge will be in the brains and the heads and of people who believe,
Yeah.
which should mean that we should uphold certain principles. Not to say that we're perfect, but I
Yeah.
just think if the church can do better at that, it'll make it even more better.
I want you
Right?
to understand this.
Talk to me.
One of the biggest issues that people have is finding an audience to teach, is finding an audience to come inside a room. As pastors, you already have a captive audience every single Sunday.
Correct.
You have a captive audience every single Sunday where people enthusiastically come to the church.
Right.
And if you say, Hmm. How about after our 1 p.m. service or after service ends at 1 p.m.? At 1:30 p.m., there's going to be a few people come in to teach you AI. There's going to be a few people who come in. They're going to teach you how to become a mentor, how to be a great mentee. I'm going to have people come in that's going to teach you the skills in the 21st century to thrive. Imagine how many lives will change because the church members, they already at the church, they're already dressed nice, they're already outside of the house.
Right.
Your kids, you don't need to hire a babysitter because you already got a youth pastor. Everything is already set up and the congregation's already there to teach them how to thrive in life. Why can't you dedicate one Sunday a month, 2 Sundays a month to do that? Uh, a pastor that I love, his name is Bishop Gregory Toussaint. He has a church called Tabernacle of Glory, an incredible church. I used to be a member of it. And I love the church so much. And one thing that he did that I love, because he has a Creole service and he has the English service. And something they did was during the Creole service, because the parents would come to the church, but they also bring their kids because the kids may not have a car to come to the church. And what he did was, while the parents were in Creole service, the kids were in a college readiness seminar.
Mm.
And then during the English service, while the kids were in church, the parents were in a seminar themselves.
Wow.
That's powerful, man. We need more churches to do that. We need more churches that's intentional. And if churches become more intentional, then it'll empower their congregation and it'll completely change how they evangelize because now you're evangelizing from a place of being the best in your field. And people respect you more when you're the best. People trust you more when you're the best. And people love you more when you are the best. And when people trust, respect, and love you more, you're able to evangelize better to bring people to Christ.
Wow, that's incredible. And I love that you said that. Let's pivot real quick. I want to ask you a question. If you can go back 10 years ago from today,
Whew.
knowing what you know now, what maybe be something that you would tell yourself or some things that you would tell yourself?
The answer, whenever anyone asks me that question, my answer is always the same. But I have to say that I'm joking, although I'm dead serious. What I'll tell myself is buy Bitcoin. That's the number one thing I would tell myself is to buy Bitcoin now. Buy and hold, okay? I'll be crazy wealthy if I did that. Now, I can't do that. But 10 years ago was it 2016? Jeez, my God. I moved back to Miami 10 years ago. Actually started Barbershop Speaks 10 years ago. Barbershop Speaks, we host intelligent conversations in barbershops and beauty salons. I would tell myself to seek out to build deeper relationships with people in the specific field I want to be in. That's something I don't think I did a great job at. I was great at finding mentors. I was great at finding people who were successful, but I didn't find people who were hyper successful in the specific field I also wanted to be hyper successful in. Now, granted, a lot of skills at the top are transferable between different industries. However, just because you are successful in higher education, that doesn't mean you're able to teach me how to be hyper successful as a public speaker, right? Those are two different things. Great fields, but that doesn't mean that you can teach me how to get a speaking engagement for 10,000 or 20,000. That doesn't mean you could teach me how to sell an online course just because you're very successful in this other field. And if I was more intentional 10 years ago about finding people in the different specific fields that I was in, I think I would be in a much different place. I don't want to say a better place. I'll be in a different place because God knows why I am here right now.
That's good. If you had a life flex, what would be your life flex if you had one?
A life flex. I started saying this recently, and it is a flex. And I say this to inspire, not to be prideful, but something that I can say with pride is I have received more awards and recognitions than years I've lived on this planet. And that's beautiful to say.
Wow, that's incredible. No, that's a good feat. And you only what? 30,
31.
31.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, congrats. Cheers and more accolades in the future.
I receive it.
Come on now.
Come on.
If you had a chance maybe to ask or tell God anything,
Hmm.
what would you maybe ask or tell God if you had a chance?
A lot of the things I would ask God are things about what has happened on earth and whether it's a family member getting sick or dying suddenly. Of course, I would want to know that. I would want to know what the grand scheme is because God is not just a chess player, he's a grand chess master. And someone like myself who is not close to a grand chess master don't fully understand his plan, but I don't know how beneficial knowing the answer to that question will be.
Mm, and why do you say that?
More knowledge does not always equate to more success, right? I do believe in learning. Obviously, I'm a professor at the finest institution in the universe, FIU. I do believe in knowledge. However, sometimes not knowing or not knowing the full picture would be better to help you paint your specific corner that it's your job to paint.
Mm,
Because if the world is a gigantic mural and I have a specific corner, it may not be my job or duty to worry about the corner all the way over there. I just need to paint my part and paint it faithfully. And after I die, when I step back with God and I look at the entire mural, he's going to say, "Well done. You did your part well. Now look at the entire mural."
no, that's good. Upon you saying that, I realized that a lot of times when we do know too much,
Mm,
and if we know everything about the things that we want to do and want to be, I
mhm,
think it'll stop us from doing it because a lot of times the level at which we see people,
mhm,
we don't necessarily see the level at which they worked, or we don't see the
mhm,
level at which they had to go through things, or we don't see, how tough it was in some situation. People see, you know, people make it look at us and they can say,
mhm,
hey, you guys accomplished some great things, not knowing that and I mean, my story isn't like so crazy, but they may not know some of the things that we've had to go through, or that you've
mhm,
had to go through, or that the people that came before us had to go through.
mhm,
And I can honestly say if like going back to it's Black History Month, going back to, the days where we were enslaved, it's like, man, had I known, like I don't know if, had they known that that's what would have been their life, if God was like, hey, you're gonna, in this amount of time, your grandkids and your great grandkids are gonna be such great people, but you would have to be in slavery for 400 years. I don't know if they would say yes to being alive. And that's kinda like knowing everything. If we know everything, do we wanna go through,
yeah,
what we have to go through in order to get to where God has us? And so,
mm,
I look at that and I'm like, man, it's like sometimes knowledge isn't everything,
yeah,
or knowing everything isn't everything because
yeah,
then it may stop you from doing the actual thing because you don't know what you have to go through in order to get to there.
yeah,
So, that's actually a good point.
yeah, it's facts.
That was good. So, I mean, my last question is this, is there anything that shaped you, from your past that you believe that has gotten you to this point?
Yeah, man. The person that I think about almost every day is my father. He shaped me. He passed away a few years ago. Every day I think about the things that he instilled inside of me. I didn't realize it fully when he was alive, but a lot of the things I'm doing now, I was in the process of doing it when he was alive, but I didn't realize how much he influenced me to actually do those things. And looking back at it with Barbershop Speaks, my dad was a barber for many years. When I look at my public speaking, my dad was a pastor. When I look at the books that I've written, my dad, he wasn't an author, but he built a library in our house when we were young. And he always gave us access to books to read. When I look at my desire to take action on everything I do or everything I think about, that's what my dad was. He would always say, if I go the day without doing something positive or not, or well, my dad would, let me make sure I say it correctly. He said, I will make sure every single day I either do something positive or learn something new. And at the end of the day, if he didn't feel like he did something positive and it was 5:30 PM, he said, "All right, I'm gonna cut the grass." If it's 11 PM, he said, "I'm gonna make sure I read at least one page out of a book." He made sure every single day he did something that pushes the needle forward. And that's exactly how I think. And his legacy definitely influences mine.
That was a good answer. That was
Yeah.
really good. I gotta dab you up for that.
Love, man.
But yeah, man, appreciate you coming by, bro. Listen, guys, if you see this book around, go to the link in the bio or the link in the description. Get this book, Faith and Works, Living Your Purpose with Excellence. I think it's a great book.
Thank you,
I'm
man.
excited to actually dive deep into it.
Yes, sir.
Now that I'm looking at it, I got some notes in here. So
Yes, sir.
thank you for coming on. And guys, make sure you stay tuned in so you don't get tuned out.
I love it. Yo, my guy, let's good.